This morning, it just may be the most far-left agenda in our country's history on a presidential ticket.
Because the Democratic ticket is now set. Governor Tim Walz's record in Minnesota includes everything from tax-funded health care for illegals to so-called gender-affirming care for minors, just to name a few, as we've been doing this morning.
Joining us now for his first TV interview, his reaction to this ticket that he's fighting against them to have the right to go to the White House and become the 47th president. Let's welcome the 45th president of the United States, GOP presidential nominee, President Donald Trump. Mr. President, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
So,
thank you.
Your reaction to Governor Tim Walz joining Kamala Harris to go against you and J.D. Vance?
I would say my reaction is I can't believe it. I never thought this was going to be the one that was picked. I know him a little bit. I helped him very much during the riots because his house was surrounded by people that were waving an American flag. Doesn't sound like very bad people. And he called me, and he was very concerned, very, very concerned that it was going to get out of control. They only had one guard. I guess it was at the mansion or at his house in some form. And he called me. I said, what do you want me to do about it? I was in the White House. He said, if you would put out the word that I'm a good person. And I did. I put out the word. I said, he's a good person. I hope everything's good. And everybody put down their flags and took their flags with them. But they took their American flags and their MAGA flags and they left. It was thousands of people. And that was the first time I said, wow, that's very interesting. And he called me back and he thanked me very much. That's my only thing I ever had to do with him. He's a very, very liberal man, and he's a shocking pick, and I'm thrilled. I could not be more thrilled.
Yeah, I mean, when they selected him, it's really a gift for you because this election is all about the issues, and all of y'all have records. You've been the president. We know where the economy stood. We know what your record is. We know what Kamala Harris's record is, and we know what his record is, and they are extremely progressive. Talk about how you're going to handle this on the campaign trail. Will you just really hone in on how they voted in the past?
Well, I am. I'm going to be doing that, what he wants. If you look at his record with no walls, no security, let everybody in, he's worse than they are. You know, nobody knew how radical left she was, but he's a smarter version of her, if you want to know the truth. He's probably about the same as Bernie Sanders. He's probably more so than Bernie Sanders. She is more so than Bernie Sanders. That's got to be your guide, Bernie Sanders, and that's not a great guide. But there's never been a ticket like this. This is a ticket that would want this country to go communist immediately, if not sooner. We want no security. We want no anything. He's very heavy into transgender. Anything transgender he thinks is great. And he's not where the country is on anything.
Mr. President,
this is a shocking, let me tell you, this is a shocking pick. And I think it's very insulting to Jewish people, and I think it's very insulting to people that want security. I think it's very insulting to anything having to do with making America great again.
Mr. President, is it true that your team thought for sure that it was going to be Josh Shapiro? Because there was one reporter who was at a J.D. Vance event yesterday, and there were some flyers printed up talking about how J.D. Vance, rather about how Mr. Shapiro was a fraud and corrupt and a lying con man and stuff like that. So it sounds like you were ready to take on him.
That sounds like what you would say.
Well, look, I'm no big fan of Josh Shapiro. I know the state very well. I think we're leading pretty good in that state, but I would have said it would have been a better choice. I would have said others would have better choice. And interesting, just about all of them, except this one, is better than her. She is not nearly as good as the people she was looking at. I know them all in one form or another. And in fact, there was a poll done, and there were some studies done. She's the worst of the group, and she's the one that's leading it. Look at this decision. This is a really bad decision for the country. You know, ultimately, I want the country to have good decisions, because ultimately what we want is for the country to do well. The country can't do well with these two people. They're very similar, and you know, you would have thought she would have reached out and got somebody that's got some different, because her record on security is horrible. She was a border czar, which she doesn't admit it now. You know, the only thing they have going is the media will play off all of the bad things that happened during her term. She was so bad that 5 weeks ago they wanted to remove her because she was unthinkable to be president. They were going to go with anyone. And then they were afraid that they would offend people if they did that. And all of a sudden, inch by inch, and then she ends up taking over. Now the same press that thought she was the worst vice president in history, which is true, going along with the worst president in history. And he went down after the debate, and there was nothing much they could do. They tried to come back. Then they brought her in, and everybody said, it'll never be her. She's so bad. She's incompetent. And after they studied it a little bit, they realized it's not going to be so easy to do. So they say, well, look, the press is going to do whatever we want because the press is a rigged deal. The press is the media, outside of you people, of course, but the media is so they're trying to build her up to the next Margaret Thatcher liberal version, and I don't believe it's going to happen. I hear she's hasn't taken one interview. She would never do an interview like this. That I can guarantee with any network. She doesn't do interviews because she can't answer questions. I don't know how she debates. I heard she's sort of a nasty person, but not a good good debater. But we'll see because we'll be debating her, I guess, in the pretty near future. It's going to be announced fairly soon, but we'll be debating her. I'd like to see it on Fox, by the way. I would like to see it. My preference would be Fox, but we have to debate.
Do you have an announcement, Mr. Are you working stuff out behind the scenes? Because we haven't heard about it yet.
No, but I can tell you every network loves me very much right now. They love me very much. I've never been so loved by CBS and by ABC Fake News. And by NBC. No, they're all in love with me now, so that, I say yes because it's up to me, obviously, also.
But, on the debate,
the most important thing is we get debate. I think debates are very important, and I think she'll be exposed just like Biden was exposed. Nobody knew Biden was that bad, and then he was exposed during the debate, and they tried to have a series of comebacks after that, and they didn't work out too well, and they viciously overthrew him. I mean, he was overthrown in it, using every trick in the book. They overthrew him. It was pretty amazing, actually, to watch.
I want to come back to the debate. Just to close this up, you're in litigation with George Stephanopoulos on ABC. So there's right, and the judge says, the suit's going to go forward. So how could you go on ABC, especially if he's going to be one of the moderators?
Well, you could use that as an excuse. I could use that. I've said that. Is there a conflict? And, there might be George Slopadopoulos, and he's got problems, and, they've got problems. But if they're going to have I guess David Muir is going to be the host in that case. You have all the hosts are pretty much named, and you have Brett and Martha, and they're great. And I'd love to see it on Fox, but, it takes two to tango.
Well, maybe you get two. Maybe you get two debates.
She doesn't want to debate. Look, she doesn't want to debate. She wants to say, I don't want to debate, but I do want to debate. When it came to Biden, I accepted everything. I accepted Jake Tapper. I accepted everything because he didn't want to debate. After I accepted everything, the only thing I said, let's stand up. They wanted to sit down at a desk. I said, that's not going to look so great. So I said, but I accepted everything. And pretty much that's the way I do it right now because I want to debate her. I think it's important for the country that we debate. Now, where it is, I'm all for Fox. I'd like to see it on Fox. I think Fox would do a really good job, but two people have to agree.
All right, Mr. President, let's talk about some of the issues. Mr. Waltz, Governor Waltz, said this about you, that you don't understand kitchen table issues. Listen.
Donald Trump's not fighting for you or your family. He never sat at that kitchen table like the one I grew up at, wondering how we were going to pay the bills. He sat at his country club up in Mar-a-Lago, wondering how he can cut taxes for his rich friends.
Mr. President, what's your response to that?
Well, I think it's just the opposite. I think if you see the vote, those people are all voting for me, the people that he's talking about with the kitchen table. And I was not always sitting at Mar-a-Lago either, but I was sitting at lots of other places. And built an unbelievable business, one of the greatest businesses. I built a business that is phenomenal. That's been really determined now how good it is. And, I could have a very simple life and a very good life and continue to do what I love. I love business and I love creating jobs, and that's what we're doing. We'll be creating jobs at a level that you've never seen before. If you look at our administration, the most successful administration from the economy standpoint there ever was. There's never been any administration that was even close, numbers-wise. And by the way, they had inflation, the level which our country probably has never seen. You know, they say you go back 72 years. Well, I think we probably never have seen inflation like that, and it's killing the same people that he's talking about. It's killing. Inflation has destroyed their administration, and they have no idea what to do about it. It's getting worse, and you had a crash the other day of over 1,000 points. It's a very bad situation that we're going in. We could end up in a depression if these people are reelected.
So let's talk about anti-Semitism. Van Jones had an interesting thing to say about anti-Semitism. He says this on CNN. It's just because he's a moderate. They're talking about Shapiro not getting the job. Or is there some anti-Jewish bias there? He goes, you also have anti-Semitism that's gotten marbled into this party. You can't be for the Palestinians without being anti-Jewish bigot. But there are some anti-Jewish bigots out there, and there's some disquiet now. And there has to be how much that just happened. How much is this pick, I guess he's saying, caving into the anti-Jewishness, anti-Semitism that's marbled into the party? Do you think that's marbled into the party? Because if I could bring in something else that's new, CNN did a poll, and they asked New York Jewish New Yorkers, if the election was today, who you'd vote for. And for the first time maybe ever since Ronald Reagan, you have a 1-point lead over Kamala Harris among Jewish voters in New York. Your reaction to Van Jones and that poll?
Well, we're going to try and win New York, and that hasn't been done for many, many decades, as you know, but we're trying to win New York, and we're very close to doing it. And probably that's another reason I was somewhat surprised. I think that any Jewish person who votes for a Democrat, or in this case, these people, but who votes for a Democrat, should have their head examined. They are so bad. If you look, they are so bad to Jewish people, what they've done and the way they talk and their policy and everything else, far beyond just what happened, because everyone thought it was going to be Shapiro. It turned out not to be Shapiro. I have very little doubt that it was, you know, not for the reason we're talking about. It was because of the fact that he's Jewish and they think they're going to offend somebody else. And you wouldn't feel very comfortable if you're in Israel right now with this team. This is the worst team ever assembled for a Jewish person or for Israel, either one. The worst team ever assembled. This is a team that will not be there. And I think I'm going to get a tremendous amount of Jewish votes. I think I was doing fine there, but I think it's a big difference. Traditionally, Jewish people vote for Democrats, but you know, we won last time. We won Miami. We won areas that nobody's ever won before with Jewish people. But when he didn't pick Shapiro, and I don't think Shapiro was the second best person or the third. I think there were other people better than him. I know them all. And, you know, so, but I was shocked when it came down to the final two that he didn't pick Shapiro. I was very surprised.
Mr. President, here's another soundbite of the current vice president talking about, you know, on her watch with Joe Biden, things are just absolutely great, right? Watch.
In Pennsylvania, we fight for a future with affordable housing, affordable health care, affordable child care, paid leave. We fight for a future where we bring down prices that are still too high and lower the cost of living for America's families.
Okay, so there, you know, she is co-pilot to Joe Biden. So while inflation and prices have been through the roof during their administration, now she's trying to put on a happy face about how we're going to turn it all around. Mr. President, I'm sure you've seen over the last week or so, her team has been leaking to the New York Times. You know, all those things we used to stand for, we're not for them anymore because we've adopted all new policies. That's probably one of the reasons why she has not appeared on television. And so she's trying to appear more moderate to appeal to people in the middle, and she's getting away with it. The honeymoon for Kamala Harris, it must drive you crazy because it's still going on.
It does, and there's only one thing, because she's just talking about Pennsylvania. No fracking. That means your energy prices are going to go through the roof, but that means Pennsylvania's going to lose 500,000 jobs. More important than the 500,000 jobs, they're going to lose tremendous streams of money. She wants no fracking, and she wants no fracking. She's trying to say now that she wants, she's gone through every single thing that was a horror show, and she disavows it now. She disavows the no fracking. If she does no fracking, and she will 100% do it. One thing I've learned about politicians, and you people knew it maybe before me, but I've known it for a long time, their first thought is the thought that they end up doing. She's for no fracking. She's for defund the police. She was the original defunder of the police. She was the original no cash bail, cashless bail, which has caused havoc. And look at how she's destroyed San Francisco. She started it out as the DA in San Francisco with policies that were so bad. It's a crime-ridden place. It went to the greatest city in America. It's a crime-ridden place right now. It's not livable. You can't even live there. And then she went to Attorney General. She's destroyed California. Her and Gavin Newsom have absolutely destroyed California. And what a shame. What a beautiful place it was. But it's not beautiful anymore. She cannot get away, because if she does this to America, every one of us are going to either be leaving or we're going to be living like dogs. Our whole country, our whole system is going to collapse. Even the talk about her has driven the stock market down.
Yeah.
When the stock market goes down, when you see it go down, that's because she gets a decent poll number. She gets bounces at a poll, the market goes down. The stock market will collapse like in 1929 if they're elected.
We know people are pulling a lot of their money out. If you looked at your 401k on Monday, you were in tears. You put on social media Trump cash versus Kamala crash. And analysts are warning, even though there was a turnaround yesterday, the rebound doesn't mean the market meltdown is over. And when we go out to these diners, Mr. President, this is the number one issue: the economy, inflation, how it's affecting us. People can't retire right now because they're losing their money. The other issue is the border. And you have Tim Walz, who said that if you build this wall that's 25 feet, he wants a ladder factory where he sells ladders or gives ladders to the illegal immigrants that are 30 feet so they can climb the wall. He wants to pay for illegals' health care, just like Kamala Harris does, their tuition, and give them driver's license. He actually signed that into legislation in his state. And he supports to make Minnesota a sanctuary state. So talk about, it is now, talk about the economy, what you're going to do for the economy, and what you're going to do for the border.
The first thing we're going to do is we're going to drill, baby, drill. And then number two, and I can do lots of things on the first day. It's not one thing or two things or four things. We're going to do lots of things on the first day. But we're going to close up the border. We're going to let people come in, but they have to come in legally. I built 571 miles of wall. We built a lot, much more than I said I was going to build. I was then going to add 200. We were 200 miles. We were 300. Literally, we were just right there. We could have had another 200, almost 300 miles of wall, and they decided not to put it up. I had it made,
paid for it.
and they sold it. Brian, they sold it for nothing. They sold it for 5% of the cost. It's very expensive. That wall is exactly what Border Patrol wanted. Wasn't my preference. I had a different wall. I had the most gorgeous wall you've ever seen, but they had to have steel, concrete, and rebar. And that's what it is. Inside that steel is concrete. Inside that is rebar. They needed a certain wall, high tech. It's very high tech. It's all wired for cameras, for everything. I put it up. They sold it for 5% of the cost of building it, and all they had to do was flip it. All they had to do is, it was all in place. We would have had 200 miles additionally in. The wall would have been unbelievable. And by the way, walls work. You've heard me say two things work. Everything's obsolete, but two things work: walls and wheels. They'll never change. Walls and wheels. Everything else is obsolete.
Running for vice president now.
Well, Mr. President, we know you dodged an assassination attempt, and we still look at the footage and can't believe, and we're so thankful. The whole country is, even if they're voting for you or not. But then there's this story about Asif Murshant. He's 46 years old. He's in New York City. He's got Pakistani family and a Tehran family. It looks like he was trying to meet with a hitman. Thankfully, the FBI had infiltrated to assassinate you. Your thoughts about this devious plot?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm in a very dangerous business. Being president is a dangerous thing. And And especially when you're an active president, when you're somebody that wants to make our country secure, when you want to build a strong military. I rebuilt our entire military. I mean, we gave a lot of it away to Afghanistan, which is like shocking. That was, by the way, the Afghanistan, when we showed that gross incompetence in Afghanistan, I was getting out, but we were getting out with tremendous dignity and strength. We were the boss. We were going to keep Bagram. If you remember, we were going to keep Bagram because it's literally 1 hour from where China makes its nuclear weapons. They gave Bagram, and China has now assumed control of Bagram, and nobody wants to tell you that. We were going to keep Bagram. But the Afghanistan move was so bad. I think it was the lowest point in the history of our country. It was an embarrassment, the worst time in the history of our country in terms of that. And we gave that up. It was like the most horrible thing. And that gave Putin the feeling that, wow, these people are incompetent. I can go into Ukraine. And frankly, as you know, under me, Iran was broke. There was no Hamas threat. There was no Hezbollah
And Mr.
threat.
President, also, Kamala Harris was the last one in the room when Joe Biden signed off on that. Meanwhile, one of your favorite people, Lawrence Jones, is live in Sturgis. Lawrence, take it away.
Good.
You have
Thank
some
you.
people that have some questions for you.
I love that.
Mr. President, how you doing,
Lawrence?
Mr. President? We're live from
I'm doing
Sturgis.
good.
Say hello to so the people have some questions for you, Mr. President. I want to bring
Thank
in
you.
Brett. He was talking about he has his daughter, his grandchildren now living with him, and you're concerned about the economy. What is your question for the former president?
So, Mr. President, I appreciate you giving our time here. One of the big concerns is what are you going to do about bringing down the rent and things like that in the economy? Because out of 8 children that I'm a father and a stepfather to, 5 of them are struggling, and I'm giving them part of my income on a regular basis. How are you going to make the economy not just the the food and electricity, but bring down the rent prices, the housing prices, so that these kids can survive and without their parents' help?
Such a good question, Mr. President.
You're right. I hear it very well. And I tell you, first of all, I love the people that you're with. I know that I must have at least 99, perhaps 100% of all of them. And I think they're incredible. We are going to drill, baby, drill. We're going to bring down the cost of energy. Energy is what caused the worst inflation, I think, in the history of our country. Food prices are up 50%, sometimes more. You look at bacon. Bacon is quadrupled. You can't order bacon. You can't order anything. We're living horribly. We have the worst inflation we've probably ever had in our country, and it started because of energy. We're going to drill, baby, drill, and then we're going to have China and all of these countries that were treating us good when I was there toward that. I mean, it took me a long time to get them to behave properly. All of these countries are going to, again, stop. Like 4 years ago, I could ask you, you were in great shape. You had low energy costs. You had low food costs. Everything was good. You could buy a house. You had low interest rates, 2% interest rates. You had gasoline at $1.87. Now it's $5. And by the way, going up very substantially. But you had gasoline at $1.87 a gallon. Nobody talks about that anymore. Nobody even can believe it's going to happen. It's going to happen again. We've got to get the energy prices down, and everything else is going to be tumbling down with it, the prices, because what Biden has done to the economy is so horrible, and what he's done to inflation in our country is just very destructive.
Mr. President, it's the perfect segue. It's the perfect transition, Mr. President, because I met Linda at the airport yesterday, and when I talked to her and I said, what is the number one concern? She's concerned about Kamala Harris and her energy policy. What is your question for the former president?
Mr. President, what can we do to achieve a permanent, long-term energy solution to keep us energy independent?
Such a great question. Mr. President?
It's a great question. It's such an important question. And look, we're run by people that are not smart people, okay? Not smart people. We have more liquid gold, you've heard me say this a million times, under our feet than any other country. Russia, Saudi Arabia, you can add them all up. We have more than anybody. We were energy independent 4 years ago, and now we're begging Venezuela for oil. Venezuela, they don't even have oil. They have tar. You have to take tar, and you have to refine it. It's a terrible process. We have the best, the most beautiful, the best, highest quality oil under our feet. Texas and numerous other places. We have the best stuff. We don't use it because Biden he talks about the environment. You know, it's amazing. They talk about the environment, and yet we refine the Venezuelan tar, okay? We refine it, and it goes up into our air. It's done in Houston, the only plant that can do it. We are going to bring the energy costs down. Everything else is going to be tumbling, and we don't need energy from any other country. We have to fill up the strategic reserves again. It's down. It's the lowest number it's ever been. He's using the strategic reserves, which is meant for military, which is meant for war and very important things. He's using it to try and keep gasoline prices down, and we can't allow that to happen. We have to fill up the strategic. I was filling that up at levels that they've never seen before. We have to fill up the strategic reserves immediately. We can't let people use that to fill the car. We will have the energy prices to a point where they're as low or lower than they were 4 years ago. Yep. But remember, I had you down to $1.87 a gallon, and that was beautiful. They were good times. Thank you.
Mr. President, it was a good time. I drive a big truck, so I remember that. Got one last question for you. A lot of folks here talking about Social Security, and this gentleman has a question on that point.
Yeah, Mr. President, a lot of seniors, their only income is Social Security. Last year, they had adjustable income of 1.2%. Meanwhile, inflation was probably 7% or higher. How about making it mandatory, whatever inflation is, that would be the income for the Social Security instead of this 1.2% pathetic adjustment?
Mr. President?
I got it. It's a great question. We could do a lot of things to help the people. People on Social Security are being killed. And one of the things I'm doing is no tax for seniors on Social Security, and I'll get it done quickly. No tax for seniors on Social Security. And for all your waiters and waitresses and everybody else out there, drivers, we're not going to have any tax on tips. No tax on tips. Remember that. No tax on tips. But we're going to have no tax for seniors on Social Security. And they are ruining, they're going to destroy Social Security because millions of people are coming onto our country and they're putting them on Social Security. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on all of our things. They're destroying it. They are destroying Social Security. We're going to make, and remember, I was there for 4 years. I didn't raise the age. They wanted to raise the age. They wanted lots of things. I said, no way. We left Social Security the way it was. Now we're doing no tax for seniors. You deserve that. We have plenty of other things. I told you about liquid gold. Yeah. We have more than anybody else. We don't have to do that. We don't have to hurt people on Social Security. So we are going to do no tax for seniors on Social Security, and also no tax on tips for the waiters that are standing right next to you.
So, Mr. President, I'm going to send it back to the couch, but the people here are going to kill me if I don't ask you. They want to know, will President Trump be at the next Sturgis right here to be with the people?
Are you ready? I love Sturgis. I love it. I love it, and I love that state. And that state, we win by so much. The answer is absolutely yes. I will be there. Absolutely yes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. President. Back to the couch.
That is exactly what they wanted to hear. Lawrence and Sturgis, very nicely done. And Mr. President, thank you very much for taking a half an hour to chat with us today.
Well, thank you. It was great fun. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Welcome back. Well, we are in countdown mode. We are 94 days away from the presidential election. Former President Trump assesses the state of the race, and now his new opponent, Kamala Harris.
We're leading the election by a lot. We knocked out Joe Biden. He didn't do too well in the debate, but that sort of ended it. And then he went through a series of problems. And you know, they actually did it so interesting. It was actually a coup of a president. If you think of it, he's got 14 million votes. He campaigned for a year, And he ended up winning, and they threw him out. They said, either you get out now or we're going to get you out the hard way. They said, there's an easy way and there's a hard way, Joe, and you'll get out. And they got out and they put this woman in who's a failed candidate. You know, she failed. I mean, she was the first one out the last time. She never made it to Iowa. And now the media's taken over and they're trying to make her into Margaret Thatcher. But I don't think that's going to work.
Well, the pollster, Robert Cahaly, told me yesterday that while she doesn't change anything in terms of policy, it's the same policy, she has changed the enthusiasm factor. Democrats will come out for her. So how does Kamala Harris change the race for you?
Well, I think that there is more enthusiasm for her. How can you be how can you be enthusiastic about Joe Biden? Okay. I mean, how do you be? But I think she's actually worse. I think she's a horrible candidate because she wants open borders. She was a border czar. She tries to, deny that now, which is not working. And
she also says she's not against fracking, and she says she doesn't necessarily want to do Medicare for all anymore.
She wants everything bad. Everything bad. If you look,
well,
she wants the all-electric car. She wants everything bad. She wants men playing in women's sports. But think of the no fracking. She's going to destroy Pennsylvania. You'll destroy Pennsylvania and many other places, by the way. Your energy bills will double, triple, and quadruple. Oh, she's terrible. She's not respected in foreign countries. I mean, she's laughed at. Everybody can't believe that this is happening. Look,
she's polling better than Joe Biden. She
was sent to see Putin about not going into Ukraine. He would have never gone in with me. He went in 3 days later. This is what's happening. So, well, it's a little bit like a fighter, though. You have a fighter and he's winning, and then somebody else is getting punished and beaten. And they say, let's take that fighter out, let's put a new one. That's what they've done here. This was a coup to Joe Biden. And I'm not a fan of Biden. He's not a smart guy, never was. You can go back 30 years, he was never a smart guy. But she's not smart either. She's not a smart person.
Are you going to debate her?
Well, I want to. We're leading in the polls, it seems, by quite a bit still. She's better than he is, but I think ultimately she'll be worse than him. She's more radical than him. He was a phony. She is also, but she's not a phony in terms of policy. She actually wants open borders. She actually wants to defund the police. To me, when you say open borders, defund the police, you don't have to go into the rest of it. But you're going to have tremendously high energy prices. She doesn't want any fossil fuels, which will destroy the country, frankly.
But just to be clear, she's doing a rewrite of history right now. She says that
of her history.
Of her history. She says, I don't necessarily mean I will ban fracking now. And she said, well, I don't necessarily need to do Medicare for all. And I was never the border czar. You know that.
Yeah, she's doing a rewrite. No, it's not a rewrite, it's lies. And she also said, and so did he, that we had a very secure border under them. We had the worst border in the history. 20 million people came in. 20 million people. And you know what they do? They just say it, and they keep saying it. The press helps them as much as possible. But they say very strongly, we had a great border. And people say, it's funny. You say it enough times and people start to believe it, too. That's the scary part. They are, it's like a whole con job. It's misinformation, disinformation at the highest level. So now their new thing is we had a safe border. We had a wonderful border. And they hope people forget. Now, a lot of people aren't, but enough people are. And it's amazing that they can say it. We had the worst border in history. Joe Biden was the worst president in history. She was the worst vice president. She was the most unpopular and least respected vice president in the history of our country. And now what's happened is the press is trying to make her popular. I don't think they'll be able to do it.
Do you regret doing the debate when you did the debate? It gave the Democrats an opportunity to swap him out and put her in. Such an early debate.
They wanted a debate. If I didn't do the debate, they'd say, oh, Trump's, not doing the debate. That's the same thing they'll say now. I mean, right now I say, why should I do a debate? I'm leading in the polls. And everybody knows her. Everybody knows me. She wants open borders. She wants a weak military. She wants high taxes. They want to quadruple your taxes, more than that. With me, I want low taxes. I want a strong border. I want strong drug policy. Our country's becoming a drug-addicted country. We're like China from 200 years ago. Everybody took over China because everybody was drugged out with the opium. And then one day they said death penalty to anybody that deals, and lots of different things happened. But look, we have a country that's really become drug addicted. We have a drug addicted country. You know that. And we better do something about it. We better do it fast. It comes through the southern border. It comes out of China. And I had to deal with President Xi. They were going to give the death penalty to anybody sending drugs to America. They were going to give the fentanyl comes out of China. For some reason, it's made in China. It goes to the southern border. It comes into our country right now at 9 times more than it was 4 years ago. We are the strongest border that we've ever had in recorded history, and they have the worst border that we've ever had. Think of it, Maria. In 3.5 years, we have probably the numbers 20 million people came into our border, many from prisons and jails, many from mental institutions, okay? Insane
You said that a long time ago, and you were mocked.
I know.
In fact, now we know.
They're empty. You know why? Because it's common sense. It's all about common sense. If I ran one of those countries, I would do Honduras. But it's not just South America, okay? It's all over the world. It's the Congo in Africa. They're sending all their prisoners. The Congo are sending their prisoners to the United States. They're bringing them into the United States. They're driving them across. They're dumping them into our country. But it's Africa. It's Asia. It's the Middle East. It's not just South America, but South America has a lot. But you know what's happening? All of these jails all over the world are being emptied out, and they're bringing their prisoners and dumping them in the United States.
On the debate, she's taunting you now. She's saying he doesn't want to debate me. Say it to my face, President Trump. That's what she said the other night.
Look, she's a third-rate candidate. She failed in her attempt to, against many other candidates. You know, she was the first one to drop out. She never made Iowa. And that was when you had a normal press. Now you have a press that's trying to protect her. The media is really dishonest. And you have a press that's trying, so maybe she'll do better. I don't know. But I think ultimately, when they hear she wants to defund the police, when they hear that she wants open borders and always wanted them. But it is amazing. I watched the news yesterday, and it's almost like she wants to have strong borders all of a sudden. She was the worst border czar in history. And, you know, with politics, it's your first thought that you always go back to. She wanted open borders, and that's where she'll be. She wants all of these things that are bad for our country. And she does want to defund the police. She's weak on police. You know, I have almost 100% of the police forces, the police people, the associations are endorsing Trump. The sheriffs all over the country, nobody's endorsing her. She ruined San Francisco. She's a San Francisco liberal. She ruined San Francisco. She ruined the state of California. She was earlier than some of these people that are so bad right now.
Well, Vice President Kamala Harris is now deciding on her running mate. So it looks like the finalists are Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania. Does he help her get more votes in Pennsylvania? What about Mark Kelly? Does he help her with the border, Arizona?
Can I tell you, I don't care. Let them do whatever. They still want to have open borders. If she picks Shapiro, she's going to lose the Palestinian vote, and that's fine. Everybody has their liabilities. I think if she picks Shapiro, who happens to be Jewish, she loses her little Palestinian base because they like me because they think I'm going to bring peace to the Middle East, even though I'm very strong for Israel. Israel loves me. But, you know, a lot of the Arab states like me, too, because you know what they want to see? They want to see peace. And I did the Abraham Accords. Nobody realizes we would have had peace all over the Middle East. I think I would have gotten Iran into the Abraham Accords. You want to know the truth? They were dying to make a deal. Iran was broke. And then now they're a very wealthy country. They have $300 billion in cash. But Iran was broke. They would have made a deal, but Biden blew it as usual. They are the worst. Look, he's the worst president in the history of our country, and she's a big part of it.
Stay with us for more of my interview with the 45th president. He will give us his thoughts on tax policy, tariffs, AI, and tech. Wait till you hear what he said about Google. All that coming up. And it is time for the hot topic of the hour, the U.S.-Russia prisoner swap and rising tensions in the Middle East, making foreign policy a major focus of the 2024 race. President Trump weighing in on this, joining me in a wide-ranging interview on this and a lot more. Mr. President, thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Thank you very much.
So much has changed since the last time you and I sat together. Of course, a successful RNC, Biden dropping out, Kamala is in, and of course, an assassination attack on you. First question, how are you feeling? Good. I see you don't have the bandage on your ear anymore.
No, I got it off. It's a good healing process. Got it off. I feel great, actually.
Big news today. Russia and the U.S. In an exchange, prisoner swap, largest East-West prisoner swap since the Cold War. What is your reaction that Russia freed the Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich and others?
Well, as usual, it was a win for Putin or any other country that deals with us. But we got somebody back, so I'm never going to be challenging that. It wouldn't have happened with us. We would have gotten it back. We wouldn't have had to pay anything. We wouldn't have had to let some of the great killers of the world go, because that's what's happened, as you know. And the deal's very complex because it just came out, so nobody understands the deal yet. And they make it complex, so you can't understand how bad the deal is for us. But we got them back. And we could have had him back. We should have had him back a long time ago. It should have never happened. It would have never happened. He shouldn't have been taken in the first place, and it would have never happened with us if I was president.
So it was more than prisoner swaps? It was something else?
I have no idea what they did. I just know they announced it's a very complex deal. That's usually a way of saying we made a bad deal, and we made it complex so nobody understands it. So we have to find out, was money involved? Did we pay billions? Like last time we paid $6 billion in addition to everything else. So did we pay money? And I put something in Truth today, and it was very interesting. How much did we pay? Who are the people? How are they? Are they bad people? Are they killers? Who are the people? Now we're finding out that the people that they're getting back are serious, very serious people. I want to be nice about it. They're getting back some real killers.
Yeah, they're Russian hackers and...
You know, I did 59 people. We never gave 10 cents. But they gave them back. I did a lot of people where I said, you got to give them back. I called the head of the country, whatever the country was. I said, got to give them back. Just give them back. Right now, well, sir, we're a system based on courts and rule of law. I said, you have no rule of law. You're the rule of law. You got to get them back. And everybody came back. We got 59. And we didn't pay money. I got people back from North Korea. That's tougher than any other place to get people back. I had a good relationship with Kim Jong-un. We got people back. But, you know, when you start paying money or when you start making deals where you give, you know, the kind of people, these are really some tough people that they got back, the toughest in the world. You start doing that, and all of a sudden you have a lot of hostages taken prisoner, so to speak. And you'll have a lot of things happening. It's very bad. It's a very bad precedent.
Well, even the Wall Street Journal reported that you raised the stakes on this because during the debate, you said you better send the hostages home, and I'm going to get Evan Gershkovich home, and I expect that before I assume office. So you did raise the stakes on this.
They got a great deal. The Russians made a great deal. I'm not going to be criticizing it because it's good to have them home, but they got a phenomenal deal, and that sets a very bad precedent. Very, very bad precedent.
Ayatollah Khomeini has ordered a direct retaliatory attack on Israel. How worried should we be about this, as well as worried about a potential attack on America?
He has no respect for Biden. He had a lot of respect for me. We had no attacks. We had nothing. We never had an attack. The only little attack was on a fort. And they called me to say, we are going to be shooting some missiles at a fort. Please tell everyone to stay in place. We will not hit the fort. You remember that. They shot 18 missiles, 6 of them disassembled in air, 12 of them landed exactly as they said, outside the fort. And nobody was injured in the true sense of the word, okay?
Are you worried about this retaliatory order against Israel?
Yeah, I'm worried about the people we have in office are grossly incompetent. I'm worried about World War III before I get there.
What about...
And we will not have World War III if I'm there. And
there are threats on you right now, right? I mean, we just heard more details about Iran reportedly plotting to assassinate you.
So I put out a word that if they do that, you have to blow them off the face of the earth, because you can't do that. You have to blow them right off the face of the earth. And I said that. I put it out on Truth 2 days ago. I said, because there was a report to that effect, and it could very well be true. And I said, if that happens, you have to blow that country off the face of the earth, because that'll be a whole new world order. The problem we have is nobody respects Biden and nobody respects Kamala. It's a big problem.
Yeah. You said at the debate and the RNC, you said, we want our hostages back, and they better be back before I assume office, or you will pay a very, very big price. What did you mean about a big price?
They know what I mean. But it looks like Biden's going to make a deal because he's giving away so much, so much. I mean, we're putting out people that nobody thought would ever be released again. this deal that was made today, I think it's wonderful that Evan's coming back. I think it's great. But these deals are so bad. These deals are going to lead to tremendous kidnappings, and people are going to be brought in. Every time somebody gets brought in, they say, we have a hostage, we want $2 billion. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. And once you agree to do it, which he has agreed all the time, it's only going to get worse. It's a terrible precedent.
Are you going to address the 50,000 Chinese nationals that have come into this country through
I'm
the
going to
southern
address
border?
everything. We're going to have a safe country.
Why are they here?
We're not going to, because they don't respect our leadership. Why did they send the balloon over America? They never did that with me. They would have never done it with me.
But I'm wondering what the plan is. I mean, are they
and the
going
worst
to
thing
create
is,
unrest?
what these people do is disinformation. And I just see it today.
Right.
They said 2 weeks ago, well, maybe there was a balloon sent over during the Trump administration. There wasn't. Okay, now that was found out there wasn't. But what they're doing is they're saying, we had a strong border. They had the worst border in the history of the world. There's never been a border like this, any country. But they figure if they keep saying it, they'll say all sorts of things. Look, they're not respected. It's like amateur night. Amateur night. Look at this hostage deal. And it's so complicated that nobody understands it. And that's the way they want it to be because it's such a bad deal. But I'm glad our hostages are back.
Mr. President, I really want to focus on policy in this interview because I want to make sure people understand what your policy is.
Okay.
And with regard to the military, there was a report today that the military has been so depleted that if there were ever a conflict between China and the United States, the U.S. would lose. A global conflict during World War II ended nearly 80 years ago. The nation was last prepared for such a fight during the Cold War, 35 years ago. And this commission finds that in many ways, China is in fact outpacing the United States and has largely negated the U.S. military advantage in the Western Pacific. How can you change that?
Can you imagine having a commission of military officers and other things say anything like that, even if it's true? Why would you ever release a report like that? It puts us in such a bad position and a bad light. But people want to, we have a great military. I've proved that with ISIS. I knocked them out in 4 weeks. They were supposed to be, it was going to take 5 years if I listened to these generals from Washington that are on television, like Milley. It was almost an impossible thing. We knocked them out in 4 weeks. Look, we have woke people on the top, but the military is not woke. The military is incredible. If you look at the job they did for me on ISIS, it was unbelievable. It was surgical. We have the greatest military. But can you imagine somebody writing a report like that? It's so bad, and then releasing it for the world to see. That's a very bad report.
This is the National Defense Strategy recognizes these nations as top threats to the United States and declares China to be the pacing challenge right now.
No, but when they write a report saying we can't beat China, I think that's a very negative thing. It's one thing to have a meeting and saying that we got to get our act together. You know, I rebuilt our military, largely rebuilt. We had
you need to do it again?
We had jets that are 50 years old. Well, we gave $85 billion of it to Afghanistan. How about that? $85 billion we gave. Do you know that Afghanistan is one of the largest sellers of military equipment in the world? They're selling the equipment that we gave them when this really low IQ president pulled out, and he pulled out the military first.
Are you going to
He pulled out, think of that. He pulled out the military. That's why we had 13 dead soldiers, but we also had 45 soldiers who were no legs, no arms, the face, the whole thing. And we also have, you know, we still have Americans left behind in Afghanistan, right? I mean, and we gave up Bagram, one of the biggest air bases in the world. We gave it up. It was almost like we fled. That was the most incompetent act. I think it was the lowest point in the history of our country. So Bagram is 1 hour away from where China makes their nuclear weapons. We gave it up. And you know who occupies it now? China.
Meta said that the picture wasn't altered. At first they said it was altered, and then they said, no, it was a bug, it was a mistake.
Mark Zuckerberg,
my point is these companies would not allow any information out about what happened.
So Mark Zuckerberg called me. First of all, he called me a few times. He called me after the event, and he said that was really amazing. It was very brave. And, you know, and he actually announced he's not going to support a Democrat because he can't, because he respected me for what I did that day. I think what I did maybe was to me, it was a normal response. But I was called by Mark Zuckerberg yesterday, the day before, on this same subject. And he actually apologized. He said they made a mistake, et cetera, and they're correcting the mistake. Google, nobody called from Google.
What about TikTok? I see that there's a lot of propaganda on TikTok, and I'm seeing a lot of positives about Kamala Harris. Is China, the CCP, all in for Kamala Harris on TikTok?
Well, China probably wants her because China understands that I understand China. She doesn't. And it's interesting. If people want to save TikTok, they have to vote for me. If they don't want to save TikTok, well, let's see what happens. But China doesn't want me to win. Obviously, because I was kicking China's ass. Nobody ever beat China. I took hundreds of billions of dollars out of China. I took contracts away from China. I took the phone system away from China, going to Italy and to other countries. China will do everything they can. And it's one of the things that's really a little bit nerve-wracking. They are putting the full force. They don't want me. They want to continue to rip off America. And with me, they can't rip. Look, she is not a smart person. She's not a smart person. If you look back 5 weeks ago, before this whole thing happened, where, it's a coup of Joe Biden, and all of a sudden the media says, well, we're stuck with her, so now we're going to make her smart. And these are people that are very pro-China. These are people that are pro-other countries. These are people that look at a world view and they think the United States is going to be a dumping ground for the rest of the world. These are people that are not good for our country. But China wants to have her so badly. They wanted Joe Biden, too. They wanted anybody but me. I've taken hundreds of billions of dollars away from China. Yeah. I've taken businesses away from China. China is not doing well right now because of me. Biden cannot get rid of the taxes, the tariffs that I put on China. Can't. You know why? Because they've taken so much money. I'm the one that did that. And one thing, before me, there was no other president that took 10 cents out of China.
Well, they say that they're a developing nation. Meanwhile,
yeah, they do that. Well, they're not we're a developing
economy. Why is the Trump campaign on TikTok? A CCP control?
Yeah, because, no, I want that. I mean, I said I want to go on TikTok. I'm the one that says we should save TikTok.
You can't get respect on these big platforms. Do you think it's fair to go back to X, as well as your Truth Social? Of course, you've got Truth Social.
Truth Social is doing phenomenal. Look, that's my voice. But X, it's great that he bought it. It's great that Elon bought it, because I'm for our country more than I'm for anything else. And they were really dishonest with Twitter. I don't know. I'm not sure that you're sort of interested. It's a very interesting thing. Should they have changed the name and all that? But that doesn't matter. Look, it was great that Elon bought it because we have a voice. We had no voice on Twitter. We had no voice at all. You put everything you put out, they'd put a flag on it. No matter what you said, they'd put a flag on it. No, I think he's trying to do a really good job. I think he's doing an important job. I don't know if it's a good business deal. Maybe not. Probably it's not a good business deal. But I think it's important that he bought it.
I know that a lot of Silicon Valley types got behind you after the assassination attempt on your life. And, of course, that's Elon Musk was supportive before that. And then just over the last 2 weeks, we see what happened with Google and Meta. Google's search bar would not bring up results of the shooting. Their AI tool would not even give any information about it. Meta's AI tool said that the shooting was fictional. Facebook labeled photos of you pumping your fist as altered. You still have a major problem with big tech, don't you?
So AI is very complex. It's got tremendous potential, but it also has potential to destroy. And they actually had one of the pictures with everything the same, except they have all of the Secret Service agents around me who are great people, very brave people, because they ran into that fire. Those bullets were going right over my head. And I heard them going. They were moving along. And these people were jumping on top of me. There wasn't one of them that was slow moving you saw them. They didn't care. They were jumping on top of me. As fast as I was down, they were on top of me. They were very brave. And when I got up, you see the faces. They were not happy. They were angry, and they were looking around. They actually have one picture where the Secret Service is all smiling. They're laughing as they're protecting me. I have the same hand up, everything else. And it's AI. It's a very dangerous thing. You've got to be we got to be very careful with artificial intelligence.
Well, Meta said that the picture wasn't altered. At first they said it was altered, and then they said, no, it was a bug, it was a mistake.
Mark
So my
Zuckerberg,
point is these companies would not allow any information out about what happened.
So Mark Zuckerberg called me. First of all, he called me a few times. He called me after the event, and he said that was really amazing. It was very brave, and and he actually announced he's not going to support a Democrat because he can't, because he respected me for what I did that day. I think what I did maybe was to me, it was a normal response. But I was called by Mark Zuckerberg yesterday, the day before, on this same subject. And he actually apologized. He said they made a mistake, et cetera, and they're correcting the mistake. Google, nobody called from Google. One of the things, like doing a show like yours, your show, you see it on Fox. But where you really see it is all over the place. They take clips of your show that you're doing right now with me. And if I do a good job, they're going to vote for me. They're going to vote for me because it's not just on Fox. It's on Fox is a smaller part of it. You're on all over those little beautiful cell phones. You're all over the place. You have a product. You have a great product. You have a great brand. So you have to get out. You have to get out. You have to do things like your show and other shows. And Google has been very bad. They've been very irresponsible. And I have a feeling that Google is going to be close to shutdown because I don't think Congress is going to take it. I really don't think so. Google has to be careful. Now, I will say this. I believe Mark Zuckerberg. He called me a lot. They are working on, and I think they fixed it.
But what could
and he's not doing what he did 4 years ago with the $500 million, I don't believe.
The Zuckerbugs.
Yeah, and he's not endorsing a Democrat, which is the first time in his life that he hasn't done that.
Are you going to encourage that their liability protection is removed should you return?
Well, it's in Congress now, and when I look at some of the parents who have been absolutely destroyed by it, that's okay with me. I think you have to do something. I do think it's a very slippery slope. I think it's very hard to do. I mean, they're going to have to go through every tweet, or they're going to have to go through every single thing that happens, like in the case of Elon. And Elon's doing a good job. Elon endorsed me very strongly. And
what about TikTok?
He's got a good insight into this whole mess that
what
we're
do you mean?
in. Elon Musk. I think I found him to be very his view on the whole situation with should we have restrictions. And I think he wants certain restrictions, but it gets to be, look, it's a very complicated subject. It's freedom of speech. It's a whole thing. But when you see some of these kids being, committing suicide over false things that are put out over these platforms, I will say that Jeff Bezos, who I didn't really know, called me, and he said that picture is one of the most important pictures in the history of our country. And he was very nice, even though he owns the Washington Post. We had a long talk, but he said I was glued to my television for longer than I've ever been glued to my television.
So all these people called you after the assassination?
They all called me and they said, thank you. They actually thanked me. Nobody from Google did, but Jeff Bezos did. Mark Zuckerberg did. Elon does. I mean, Elon's a friend of mine. Elon gave me the strongest endorsement. Elon is not somebody to endorse if he doesn't believe in you. And he gave me the strongest. And I'm not so great on his electric cars. Think of it. It's not like I'm saying, let's go all electric, because he understands that that system won't work. That will actually end up hurting the electric car.
Vice President and Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris will be holding a rally in Philadelphia today, where she is expected to be joined by her running mate, which has reportedly been narrowed down to two: Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro or Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Now, Politico is reporting this morning that most of the Democrats they spoke to last night say they believe the chances are higher for Harris picking Tim Walz, a big reversal in expectations from just a few days ago, even a day ago. Republican vice presidential nominee and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance will also be campaigning in South Philadelphia this afternoon. It's going to be his first stop in the Keystone State since joining the Trump ticket. And there's this: a new poll finds that Trump and Harris are tied at 48% in Pennsylvania. The two campaigns reportedly spending more than double on advertising in Pennsylvania than in any of the other 6 swing states. Axios says, quote, Trump and Harris go all in to make Pennsylvania the new Florida. Joining me now is Pennsylvania Congressman Dan Mueser. He's a member of the House Financial Services and Small Business Committees. Congressman, this morning, all eyes are on Pennsylvania. Your thoughts?
Yes, good morning, Cheryl. Yes, I am in Philadelphia, and it is going to be quite a day here. We have Dave McCormick in town, who's run for U.S. Senate, and then we have J.D. Vance. And yes, I heard something about the Vice President Harris in town going to...
Just a rumor?
Yeah, just I heard it the early, somebody talking at the water cooler. But look, this thing's going to come down to there's such a stark difference between a common sense conservative Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, who's the most radical, self-proclaimed, be more woke, ranked the most liberal United States senator in the Senate. That's pretty hard to do when you're going up against Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. So there's such a stark difference there. The vice president is very much minimized, even here in Pennsylvania. But I'll just add this, Cheryl. The idea, first of all, it makes the most sense. Pennsylvania's in play to offer the position to our Governor Shapiro. But the idea that in the Democrat Party, it's so controversial that he supports Israel over Iran, and the party finds that so controversial, that's pretty disturbing. Democrats ought to be paying attention to that.
What do you make of this reporting that that Waltz is actually more of the choice? I mean, that's Politico.
Yeah, well, that's what we are hearing. And by the way, Waltz's latest comment that being socialist is kind of like being neighborly. It sounds as if he's going to fit very well with the ideology of Kamala Harris. Let's face it, Kamala Harris doesn't know anything about economics, doesn't know anything about international diplomacy or military. She knows her ideology, and her and her minions care more about their ideology than they care about any sort of outcomes for the American people. There's no plan. There's no economic plan. There's no plan for strengthening our national security. They're anti-energy. They're for open borders. I mean, it's bizarre. It's gas backwards. It's upside down.
Yeah, no. We were just showing the different biographies of these two men, so we'll see. It could happen at any moment when we get that announcement. But certainly, as we mentioned, J.D. Vance going to be right there, and you'll be there, I'm sure. So former President Trump wants to make the economy the focus of the 2024 race. He's blaming Vice President Harris for yesterday's stock market sell-off, writing on Truth Social that voters have a choice: Trump prosperity or the Kamala crash and the Great Depression of 2024. If we're going to get back to talking about the economy, Congressman, what say you?
Well, look, the so-called Bidenomics that she speaks so highly of was all about excessive spending, assault on domestic energy, raising taxes, making it far more difficult for small businesses to do business and large businesses. And what their plan is to double down. So the economy, industry, business hears that, they see that, and then take into account the turmoil that exists throughout the world. It's a very unpredictable environment, not one that has any pro-growth initiatives whatsoever. And so even if there's a 10% or 20% chance Kamala Harris could win, it's a nervous market, and it will continue to be volatile. And I think President Trump is absolutely right. I mean, his pro-growth plans to make the United States the most competitive place in the world to do business, to bring stability, and to bring great trade agreements, that will create a boom to the markets.
Well, and so, Congressman, maybe bring up the issue of student debt. I mean, let's look at the tally here where we're at now under the Biden-Harris administration with student debt. They've given it's $167 billion in student debt to 5 million Americans that they've forgiven thus far. That's something else that J.D. Vance could bring up today when he's in South Philadelphia, Congressman. So, real quick before you go, I just am curious, the state of play. Pennsylvania is in the eyes of both candidates right now. What do these candidates need to do to secure Pennsylvania? Is the topic energy? Is it fracking? Is it health care? Is it student debt? Something else?
Yeah. Well, you just went through a good list there. We care a lot about the border issue, which is a total disgrace. And let's face it, Kamala Harris was the border czar. So let's use that as an example of how effective she is in her tasks. The fentanyl deaths, in Pennsylvania running rampant. Any chief of police in any of my small cities will tell you that those drugs are coming from the border. 20% inflation is on people's every day. They're feeling it in the groceries and the gasoline. So that's not a good thing. How anti-public safety Kamala Harris just is. And not taking any leadership when it comes to fighting crime, as well as defunding the police. And by the way, on the border, she wants to disband ICE. These are all things that don't sit well. They're not relatable to the Pennsylvania voter. And you mentioned health care. She wants to completely do away with employment-based health care, which is millions of Pennsylvanians. So they're going to have a tough time selling their policy in Pennsylvania.
Well, yeah.
Trump's policies are winners.
Well, she's been changing a lot of those policies, which we've been reporting on extensively. Congressman Dan Mueser, a big day ahead for you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon.
All right.
Welcome back. A Pakistani man with ties to Iran charged with plotting to assassinate former President Trump. The Department of Justice says this has no ties to the attack at Trump's rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. I sat down with former President Trump last week in Bedminster, New Jersey, at his golf club, right before he was going to be interviewed by the FBI about the assassination attempt on his life. I met the FBI agents that were there. He told me that the shooter in Butler could have foreign ties as well. Watch.
I think it's being reported that this kid maybe wasn't quite as innocent as people think. He had some encryptions that may be foreign-based, and they can't open up the app. They can't open up his phone, another way of saying it, because, as you know, Apple controls that. They can open it, but nobody else can. And, you know, when it comes to assassination attempts, I think you're going to have to be able to open up a phone. So they're going to have to see if that happens. But we're hearing that they may have 3 situations where they can't get access to the information. You can't have that happen.
So are you thinking maybe this was a foreign adversary?
I have no idea. I'm just saying what's been reported and what I heard.
What do you think happened that day? Can you tell us a little about
Well, I would say that he's just a very disturbed young man. It would seem that he might be liberally based, okay, or progressive, as the expression goes.
Joining me now is Florida Congressman Brian Mast, member of the House Foreign Affairs and Transportation and Infrastructure Committees. He's also a U.S. Army veteran, a recipient of the Bronze Star and Purple Heart medals. Congressman, thanks very much for all of your service to our great nation, and thanks for being here.
Always glad to.
What is your reaction to what you just heard? It's still a question as far as why we don't know more information about these assassination attacks.
Yeah, unfortunately, every single day since July 13th, we all come away with more questions about not just what were the origins of the attacks, but how was any attacker, whether foreign-based or otherwise, able to get so close to President Trump. All of these security failures for what is supposed to be the gold standard of dignitary protection. Is there certainly a potential that this could be tied to Iran or someone else? Absolutely, and that makes one of those really big questions. Why? Because everybody knows that President Trump, Mike Pompeo, anybody else that was a part of killing that Iranian Revolutionary Guard leader, Qasem Soleimani, is forever and for the rest of their life on a highly targeted list by Iran for any an assassination attempt. So why wasn't the security hired? That question always has to exist.
Yeah, it's a great question. Also, there's a question around China, and I want to get your take on this. Our number one adversary, Vice President Kamala Harris's running mate, Tim Walz, has been praising China. He lived there for a year. He was teaching there for a year. He visited the country about 30 times. He even honeymooned in China. Walz even speaks a small amount of Mandarin and ran a business taking students to China. In 2019, Walz called for President Trump to end his trade war with China, claiming that it was hurting U.S. farmers. And then in 2016, Walz said this: "I don't fall into the category that China necessarily needs to be an adversarial relationship." Congressman, your thoughts on the vice presidential pick on the Democrat side and his ties and relationships in China?
There's so much about him that's concerning to me. One of the statements that wasn't brought up just now about his ties to China, as he was bringing in people into China for these exchange programs, his message to them was downplay your Americanness. That's not something I ever want to hear from somebody that is vying to be vice president of the United States, maybe potentially president of the United States someday. Downplay your Americanness. Try to take on more of a Chinese role. It should be the exact opposite of what's going on. That wasn't his role. One of the other things, major concern about this individual, I don't know if you're going to talk about, he was in the military. He lost his rank as Command Sergeant Major. Why? Because he decided he was going to choose Congress over combat. That's something no warrior that I know would ever do.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. But let me just close the loop on China here, because when he's running this business that is doing exchange of students, the U.S. and China, is it not true? I mean, you're on the Foreign Affairs Committee, but is it not true that Communist China has used many students to exploit the visa process, to actually become surveillance tools for the Communist Party of China?
Over and over and over again in Ivy League universities to community colleges. This is something that's taking place. They're exploiting that visa program. And the schools want this in many parts. Why? Because the Chinese Communist Party are sending these individuals in as, let's call them, cash-paying, tuition cash-paying individuals. So they're just welcoming them in with open arms. And again, just to go back to that point, anybody that's a part of that conversation should be getting Americanized, not being told, hey, Americans, you downplay your Americanness. That can't be the path.
No wonder there's all this propaganda on TikTok about how great he is. But let me get back to the military, which you just brought up. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz accused of stolen valor. 3 retired command sergeant majors have accused Walz of retiring from their Minnesota National Guard just before their deployment to Iraq in 2005. They also said that he misrepresented himself as a command sergeant major, despite his retirement causing him to lose the promotion. Watch this.
He abandoned us. I mean, what the hell kind of leader does that? I mean, he just, as soon as the shots were fired in Iraq, he turned and ran the other way and hung his hat up and quit.
As far as I know, he's the only one that has bailed in a senior position and then used that 10 minutes and no credibility to hold that position, no experience, to somehow bolster his credibility in Congress. And even his webpage lays claim that at the time when he retired, he was the senior non-commissioned officer in southern Minnesota. Hello, Tom Behrens lives in southern Minnesota in his district. I think Tom Behrens was a sergeant major at the time.
Congressman, you are a U.S. Army veteran, the recipient of the Bronze Star and the Purple Heart. Your thoughts on this individual in terms of what this says about the ticket?
I don't say these words lightly at all. If you leave your men, your soldiers, your women, whoever they are, under your command, Command Sergeant Major, under his command, if you leave them on the heels of combat, that is an act of cowardice. That is not an act of leadership. It is not an act of somebody that may potentially wear the title of Commander-in-Chief one day. You cannot have those two running together. At all. It breaks my heart to hear that that's what his soldiers were saying about
him. I mean, look, there are questions all morning long, really, about why Kamala Harris would double down on a progressive agenda by choosing him. But I guess Josh Shapiro, who many people expected to get the role, was Jewish, and she was afraid to lose that Palestinian vote. Is that the way you see it?
I've heard that part of it. And to bring a little joke into this, I've heard people calling him Tampon Tim, because why? He was a progressive individual that wanted to put tampons in boys' locker rooms in the schools as governor. He's a progressive governor. These are the kind of policies that he's taking place. So it makes perfect sense why he's being chosen by the Biden administration, or by the Harris administration, because they are just a continuation of the extremism of the Biden administration, and maybe even were the ones that were in charge of the Biden administration during all of these debacles that we've seen, from the Afghanistan withdrawal, certainly the southern border. They're trying to downplay that she was the border czar. The list goes on and on.
Yeah. Real quick before you go, do you have anything to say about the state of our military today, given this most recent National Defense report that if we were to see a conflict with China and Russia, that the U.S. would be on the losing end of things?
We have outstanding service members, and we have some really good leaders. I served under the command of our current CENTCOM commander. We have some great leaders, but our military has to have the backing of the commander-in-chief, whoever that is, that they're not going to be hung out to dry. You can't have these situations where their paychecks are just being dwindled by inflation. You have to make the human beings more important than the hardware if you want to have the strongest possible military.
Sure. Makes perfect sense. Congressman, it's great to see you this morning. Thank you, sir.